But anyway, this actually comes from the Daily Beast. It says here, Bill Maher and Quentin Tarantino believe movies have become too PC. On Friday night, Bill Maher welcomed Quentin Tarantino to his real-time program. Given the extraordinary egos in play, there was a high likelihood of this HBO tete-a-tete being insufferable, and about how the current state of cinema is too politically correct. And surprise, it was just that. Okay, Daily Beast, let your opinions be known. After some back and forth on how Tarantino shouldn't retire after his next film, as he promised, with the filmmaker revealing that he wants to quit because he's a student of film history and directors don't get better after a certain age, like Billy Wilder and Don Siegel, and that he considered doing a remake of Reservoir Dogs as his last picture, the two got into their thoughts on the current cinema atmosphere, which they both apparently take issue with, and Tarantino's unapologetic attitude when faced with any degree of criticism says here, quote, I've always really appreciated the way you've pushed back when everyone's tried to stifle you, shut you up, shame you, bully you, corral your artistic license. They tried it with the last one, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Some BS about Margot Robbie doesn't have enough lines. You do what I wish other people would do. Instead of apologizing like a little wuss, you say, I don't agree with your assessment. What's so hard about that? In fact, the line is, I reject your hypothesis, is what he actually said. And I have a t-shirt with that very thing. He says, I agree. Look, even when we're in a pressure situation where your movie is opening next Friday, if somebody brings up something that's actually legitimate, I'll even have a conversation with them about it because I'm actually into interesting thought. And I don't even have to agree with you, but when it's just BS, well, then it's just BS. Well, it seems like criticism in recent years has gone to this place of not just, okay, you can criticize a movie, but they seem to be saying, this isn't the movie I would have made because you can't. Tarantino would then reference the incident that occurred at the 2019 Cannes Film Festival when Tarantino was asked why he gave Robbie's Tate such little dialogue, and Tarantino came back and said, I just reject your hypothesis. Again, a great line, for sure. He says then, I had a situation like that where somebody asked me about something. Well, why didn't you do this like this? And I go, oh, would you have done that? Yes, I would have done that. Okay, but you never would have written that script, and you never would have made that movie, and thus you never would have been at the Cannes Film Festival in the first place, so it's a moot argument. I don't care if that's egocentric at all. It is a fact. It is true. And seriously, calling them out. That is one of the most perfect responses that I've heard to media. Yeah, whenever media and critics will call out saying, I would have done this, I would have done that, it's like, yeah, but you didn't. And if you did, it wouldn't be there and it wouldn't be what the film is in the first place. Obviously, that can even be put back on me with my own criticisms of film. But there has become a thing that's gone on, especially in this last year, where ideology is more important than art. Ideology trumps art. Ideology trumps individual effort. Ideology trumps good. Ideology trumps entertaining. And then he said, and then Bill Maher added on, there are two kinds of movies, virtue signalers and superhero movies. I think there's a very good point to be made there. This definitely goes back to what even great filmmakers like Martin Scorsese have said. Remember, he got in a lot of hot water for some reason for pointing out a simple fact that when it comes to the superhero genre, they're more so like theme parks, where, yeah, they're a lot of fun, but there isn't a whole lot of substance to them. And I think that he was totally spot on then. I still agree with his comments, and it looks like some people in Hollywood are finally starting to catch up to that idea. And here is what Tarantino said yes to this. And here's what the Daily Beast response is. Look, I love Tarantino's movies, but those clearly aren't the only two types of movies. And it's pretty rich that Tarantino is whining about the general criticism he received over Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which isn't even in his top 5 films, by the way, given how he artfully dodged answering any tough questions about his relationship with Harvey Weinstein. And of course, that's what gets brought back. Anytime anyone calls out woke Hollywood, what they will do if they are a part of Hollywood is they will be called out for their relationship with Harvey Weinstein or something like that. And so therefore, it all gets thrown into this, oh, well, his opinions don't really matter, or his opinions shouldn't be taken seriously because of X, Y, or Z. And I think it's completely ridiculous that that nonsense happens. So obviously, I don't go to the Daily Beast very often, but the Daily Beast is clearly trash and trash fire. But anyway, Tarantino, great line there, saying what's become the trend is that ideology trumps art. And obviously when Bill Maher is saying there's two kinds of movies, he's clearly being hyperbolic there. We know that there's other kinds of films. I love how this Daily Beast author is trying to act so smart of, well, actually, there's more than just two types of movies. I'm sure even Bill Maher would say, yes, theoretically and technically you are correct. But as far as like mainstream attention and what gets talked about, there are basically two kinds of movies: superhero comic book-esque film, and then woke virtue signal indie film. Those are the two that get the most attention. When you look at the Oscars, for instance, when you look at award shows, which ones usually get the most attention and get talked about? Nowadays, it's typically the woke, ideologically driven films. What gets trending every single year? Oscars So White. What have they recently done at the Oscars? Oh, they've now made quotas that have to be fulfilled if a movie wants to even be considered for Best Picture. Which now means once those rules officially go into effect, which I believe is next year, means an asterisk is going to be needed to put to every single movie that wins. And obviously, I think that you could probably even go back a little bit further, because look at all the films that have won Best Picture as of late. Most of them are films that no one has ever seen, have never even heard of, have seen once, liked it, and never will be seen again. And yet we're saying these are the greatest movies of that year, that these were the best of a specific year. And obviously there are so many movies that get left behind. One great example is a film like The Gentleman, which I would argue was one of the best movies of last year, didn't even get any attention at the Oscars. It may have gotten nominated, I think, for screenplay, maybe, but it didn't get any other mainstream attention. And yet, most people, if you were to ask them what won at the last few Oscars, what got nominated at the last few Oscars, they probably would be pretty hard-pressed to answer that question, especially since most of the films getting nominated do fall into those categories. And typically, it's that second one of it, or rather the first one, of being a virtue signaling film. And as Tarantino even points out, not caring about art or individual effort, but on ideology, more so than anything else. So yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. So yeah, kudos Quentin Tarantino for actually calling out that nonsense. Now for a huge shout out to all of my June Patreon and Subscribestar members: Andrew Hoyle, Biffer the Hobbit, Brian P., Dion, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Enrique Evangelista, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Inflamed Wood, It's a Trap Productions, Jason Clark, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Jonathan Carney, Laura the Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mr. Peabody and his evil twin with the beautiful hair, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Riff Magos, Rosetta Allen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, and rather Teresa Martin is Miss Martin Muses now, Tina Bojan, Tina B., and Washington Madranda. Thank y'all very much for being my supporters on Patreon. And to my Subscribestar peeps, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, Stand For, John B., Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / The New Number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, Nevanon G. Adams, and ZK Man. Thank you all very much for being my Subscribestar members. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every video and live stream, please consider joining on Patreon or Subscribestar. You also get access at other tiers to things like a bi-monthly podcast, bi-weekly, twice a month podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger, which is a lot of fun. There's also a tier in which you can join me once a month for the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where you all get to, at that level, join me for discussions, talk about any projects that you might be working on, or just hang out and have a good time. It's a lot of fun. And also, too, for many of those levels, you also get access to a giveaway section on the Discord server, where you get access to giveaways of things like 4K movies, digital codes, and tons of other stuff like that. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, check out the links in the description and sign up over on Patreon and Subscribestar. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless.